are 4 fontanelle, which are fibrous membranes that are located in the baby skull before and a little after they're born. The function of these is to allow the skull to compress as it comes through the birth canal. Okay, that's this major function, but it has other functions as well. Your job is to name the 4 fontanelle, which I can't show you right now because the school only has 1 fetal skull and one of the professors is using it for a test at the moment. So
Wow.
I'll bring it in next week. I have one at home, so I'll
You
bring
have
one.
a baby skull at
A
home?
plastic one, yes.
Oh.
But at NASA, we were given our own set of bones to have forever.
Wow, that's
So
fantastic.
It was. It made my life a lot easier. Okay, anyway, your job is to name them. For example, over here where there's bone in a fetal skull will be the anterior or frontal fontanelle. Back here will be the posterior or occipital fontanelle. Then on the side over here is the anterolateral or sphenoidal fontanelle. And then above the mastoid process is the mastoidal fontanelle or posterolateral fontanelle. So your job is to name them and to know when they close or ossify.
So they like compress when they come
Yes,
out?
the skull compresses.
Okay.
It allows the skull to compress. It's only a fibrous membrane. Okay, anterior, posterior, anterolateral, posterolateral. I'll bring in one next week, so don't worry about that now. Okay, craniometric landmarks are anatomical points of distinction that are used by, mostly by radiologists and, neurosurgeons, and it's anatomical, but, they're just points where either sutures intersect or bones get together or something prominent on the skull. It's called craniometry. So there are about 25 of them. I only gave you the 12 important ones. Okay, so I need to look at, bregma, we'll start off with the bregma. Okay, and the bregma is where let's do the sutures first. How's that? Because you only need to know 4 sutures. Okay, this is the coronal suture. Coronal sutures because it's on a coronal plane. This is the sagittal suture. It's on a sagittal plane. Then the lambdoidal suture, which separates the 2 parietal bones from the occipital bone. And on each side is a squamosal suture, separating the squamous portion of temporal from parietal. Those are the only 4 sutures I'll hold you responsible for. Okay? So once again then, bregma is where the coronal and sagittal suture intersect. That point right there is your bregma. And that's a very important landmark in Oriental medicine or acupuncture. And you can find your own bregma by taking your middle finger and your thumb, put your thumb on the bridge of your nose, and just arch, and that's where your bregma is about. Okay? Next is the nasion. Nasion is where the 2 nasal bones intersect with the frontal bone, right there. Nasion. Above it, you have to visualize, you see an upside-down triangular region between the 2 supraorbital ridges there? See that? That's the glabella. Glabella. Next, pterion. Okay, the pterion is where the sphenoid, parietal, and temporal intersect, right here, this region. This is where the anterolateral fontanelle used to be. Now it's the pterion in the adult, where these 3 bones intersect. Clear? Lambda. The lambda is where the sagittal suture intersects the lambdoidal suture, right there. Lambda. Next, asterion is right above the mastoid process where the squamosal suture intersects the lambdoidal suture, right about here. Next. Okay, the inion is another name for the external occipital protuberance. So in other words, if I point to this bump and say name this process, it's the EOP. But if I point to the same thing and say name this craniometric landmark, then it's not the EOP, it's the inion. Different name for the same thing. Clear?
Clear.
Next. Opistheon is found at the posterior most margin of the foramen magnum. Right there, opistheon. Posterior most margin of the foramen magnum. And then opposite it, on the anterior most margin, behind the basilar portion of the occipital bone, is the basion. Basion. Anterior most margin. Next. Menton is at the bottom of the chin. Menton for mental. Gonion, the 2 gonions are the angles. The 2 angles are the gonions. And then the prostheon is right between the 2 central incisors, right there. where it intersects the maxilla, prostheon. And that's the end of the skull.